Hello everyone, and welcome back to another Solo Spooky Story. My name's Rob, and I'll be your host. For those of you who don't know, the Solo Spooky Stories are shorter stories every other week presented by myself, where I talk about a case I found particularly interesting, or a listener has submitted something to us, and we just talk about it. They're also shorter episodes, which a lot of people do like, so try to find a balance between the closer to 1 hour long episodes and these closer to 20-minute long episodes. So we got good feedback on the balance there. So some people like listening to just the short episode in the morning on a walk or something like that, and then others like to sit down and listen to the longer episodes. So, we're trying to keep that balance there, and I actually really enjoy making these episodes as well, so they're good to do. With that said, we're just going to get into it. So it's been a few weeks now since we've had a UFO case, and I've been looking around online for a few different things to do, and I decided, you know what, we're going to talk about a case that is somewhat famous for the fact that it is effectively confirmed as a hoax. And it's a fascinating case that I particularly enjoy, and I'll be honest, I wasn't fully aware of the total narrative of this story until I looked into it, which it just makes it even more fascinating. So I guess I always just discounted it in my mind because I was just basically writing it off because I know it's a hoax. And before we even get into the story today, like the story I'm about to talk about is a hoax. I'm just confirming that. I know I've said it 3 times now, but this is the reason why I just never really talked about it, because I didn't think there was much else to really discuss. However, after reading this and doing some research on this, it's actually hilarious how this story goes, and I just wanted to share it with everyone. It's kind of just a wacky, weird story that kind of serves almost as a warning for the hysteria that can sometimes take over when people see these cases in front of them, and I suppose the evidence, I say in inverted commas, that comes with it. So we are talking today about the Jonathan Reed 1996 Seattle UFO case. And there's going to be people who are going to know a lot more about this than I will, but I'm going to kind of offer up a synopsis of the story today. And if you want to do more on it, or if you want us to look into it more, if you want to hear more about it, you can let us know. But this is a wildly popular story, as I said, because people know it's a hoax. And the aspect of this story that is the most popular to it is the fact that this has a supposed video evidence of an alien autopsy. So this story is from 1996, and at this time, this still image of an alien body with its eyes kind of closed over, lying on a thermal blanket with its head bashed in, basically started doing the rounds, and was pretty quickly claimed as evidence from a video autopsy of an alien body. And the story that then came with it was fantastical, and we're just going to talk about it today, and you can just hear how wild this is. I want to say before we get into it, just to frame where we are in the world at this point, this is 1996. We are in Seattle. We're in the Pacific Northwest. X-Files fever has completely taken over the world at this point, particularly America. There's a lot of X-Files fans around. There's X-Files episodes set in this area. It's filmed in Canada and kind of around this area. The UFO community is vibrant and going at like 90 miles an hour at this point in time. There is a lot of interest in UFOs, a lot of interest in aliens, and this just kind of adds to it. It is 3 years into the X-Files being out, and it's really kind of at its height of popularity. So it's not surprising that this sort of story would come out at this time. So this is probably one of the most controversial and probably debated UFO stories in the paranormal lore that is UFOs. And Reed himself is a strange character. He claimed about to have this kind of violent encounter with an extraterrestrial being in the forest near Seattle. And the saga basically involves alleged physical evidence, dramatic media appearances, webs of supporters and criticizers, and then people detracting, and it's just wild. There's a lot of infighting going on here, and it all helped to shape its legacy for decades, and people still talk about it. So, I'm here making a podcast on it right now in 2026. It's still known about. People still talk about it, and some people do still believe it as well, which is interesting. And I just want to get into the whole event. We'll talk about it, and then we'll talk about the aftermath afterwards. But it's a wild case. So we're talking now currently about the 15th of October 1996. And yeah, as I said, X-Files fever has taken over. The world is mad for X-Files. And this story emerges from Jonathan Reed at that time, where he says he was out walking his dog in the mountains, the Cascade Mountains in Washington State. He's out on a hike, whatever, as you do at this time. And he says that he basically just wanted to get out of the city and wanted to just clear his head, which, you know, I respect that. I totally get it. You need to get out in nature every once in a while to just reset the batteries. He said that he had been dealing with the recent death of a close friend and he just wanted solitude, which is absolutely fair enough. And he took his dog called Susie and he hiked into a wooded area near the Snoqualmie Pass. I've absolutely said that wrong and I apologize, but that is what it is. And Reed says, it was just supposed to be a quiet day. I wanted to walk, to think, and to just get away from everything. He says the weather was pretty cool, the forest was quiet, and he just claimed that he'd been out walking for a number of hours. He says after walking for a few hours, Susie suddenly became quite agitated, and then says she took off ahead of me, barking like crazy. I thought maybe she'd found a deer. So he followed the sound of her barking into a clearing just to see kind of where she'd gone. And I suppose it's not unusual for dogs to pick up things that we don't hear, and he probably just wrote it off in his head as just exactly that. She probably saw a deer and was chasing after it. So he said that as he got into the clearing, he saw Susie circling something quite small, dark, and it was moving strangely. He says, at first I thought it was a child in a costume. It was about 4 feet tall, it was thin, with this black, almost rubbery looking skin. He described it as having a large head, slender limbs, and a shimmering or vibrating quality to its outline, with no visible mouth movement. He then went on to say that the creature or entity that he saw in front of him started emitting a high frequency sound that was distressing Susie the dog. So perhaps this is what drove Susie to run towards it in the first place, almost kind of like a dog whistle, but one that was actually like stressing her out. He says it was like a vibration more than a sound, and Susie was just going crazy. So then Reed then claims at this point, with the dog circling around the creature, that it lashed out and attacked. He says it reached out and touched her. She just froze, and then she fell over. She was dead. Reed then said, in his panic, in shock and in rage, he claims he grabbed a large branch from the ground and says, I didn't think, I reacted. I swung as hard as I could. He claimed that the blow that he dealt on the creature struck it in the head and allegedly killed it instantly. So this guy is claiming that he just beat an alien to death, basically. For those of you that aren't keeping up with this alien killed the guy's dog, he found a branch and beat it to death. Look, I understand this. As a dog owner myself, absolutely, I would do the exact same thing. It's just wild. Like, totally wild. So he beats this alien to death with a branch, and he says upon killing it that the creature's body vibrated or flickered. He says it was like it wasn't fully there, like it was trying to phase in and out of existence. He then, as he kind of looked at it further, he described the skin as being cold and rubbery, and that the body was extremely light. So upon realizing what he did, he claims that he wrapped the being in a thermal blanket that he had in his backpack and carried it back to his vehicle. And he says at this point, I kept thinking, what have I done? What is this? Before he could leave the clearing, though, by the way, also, he has, for those of you wondering, he's just left his dog's body there. He's packed up this creature, but he's left the dog's body there. Just so we're keeping track of this, he cared so much about the dog that he beat an alien to death, but now he's just leaving the dog there. Just to point that out. So before leaving the clearing, Reed said that he noticed a strange object floating above the ground. He says it was like a black box, but it wasn't solid. It hummed, it rotated slowly. And at some point later on, he described it as the obelisk. Not at all, a term heard at the time, I'm sure. But yeah, it's a pretty common term, and I'm sure he was a fan of 2001. So he claimed he touched it and felt a jolt of energy. It was like touching electricity, but without pain, is what he was reported as saying. And he said that after touching it, that the object vanished shortly after it. So he claimed then that he eventually brought the body home with him, and he claimed that when he got back to his house, he realized he needed to do something with the body. So he decided to store the body in a freezer in his garage. He says, I didn't know who to call, I didn't know what to do, I was terrified. At this point then, he says he decided to go have a sleep. because he was stressed about all of this. I guess it's believable. The stress of it all just made him exhausted, and he just decided he needed to go have a snooze with an alien in his freezer. People react to stress in different ways, and this is definitely a way to react to stress. I don't know. This is what he claims. But then he said that he realized he couldn't sleep after a while. Shockingly, I know. And decided to examine the body instead. So over the next several days, he claimed to examine the body, taking multiple photographs and videos. At which point he described the being's eyes as being black lenses that could retract, revealing smaller, more human-like eyes beneath. So yeah, there's a lot going on here. He's getting up close and personal with this alien and is doing all sorts of examinations on it. At one point, Reed makes probably his most dramatic claim of it all. He says that when he was in his house, minding his own business, I heard a sound from the freezer, a thumping. When I opened it, the body was moving. He said that the being seemed to revive itself slowly and that it was disoriented but not aggressive. I mean, I would be too if I was locked in a freezer. Reed at this point then claims that he communicated with it telepathically. He says it didn't speak, it projected feelings, images, it was afraid. And he decided to name the being Freddy, which is wild. So we're just gonna go back over this again. Reed claims he killed this creature, like bashed its head in. He then conducted an autopsy on this creature, took numerous pictures and videos of it, fucked it back in the freezer then to figure out what he was going to do with it. And then at some point, the creature decided to revive itself and just came back to life, and then decided to communicate with him telepathically. After having established that it could kill his dog just by touching it, he was cool to just chill, literally, and talk to him telepathically and called him Freddy. So yeah, it's mad stuff. He then claims that after the incident, he was targeted by government agents. They broke into his home, they erased his files, they threatened him. He said that his bank accounts were frozen, his identity was erased, and his dog's body stolen. He obviously decided to go back and get the dog at some point, but from what I can see, he doesn't mention taking the dog's body initially, so I don't know. And yeah, these claims all became a major part of his later narrative. He says that Freddy eventually was taken away, and that was it. He was gone. So a wild story, to say the least. I think is fair. And yeah, so he claims that in all of this as well, that he found this metallic bracelet that Freddy wore, and he claims that the object was used to basically induce an altered state of consciousness for those that used it. How he figured this out, I do not know, but this is what he claims. So he then circulated some of the stills from the photos and from the videos that he took, and this kind of spread on the internet quite quickly. Again, mid-90s, the internet was quite popular at this point. And yeah, the claimed link artifact, yeah, he said that it altered his state of consciousness. Apparently could also possess some sort of teleportation abilities. Again, just mad stuff. Like it's that thing of like when people lie, their stories are way too detailed and they add way too many details in that it's too complicated a story for it to be real. And I genuinely think this is what's happening. He also claimed at one point that the government threatened him and his friends, and that they made some of his friends disappear. No claims or evidence of this in any way, but this is what he claimed. So yeah. The alleged evidence then, as I said, those photographs and video footage, the camcorder footage that was out there, the autopsy video, the link artifact, and he claims he also took blood and tissue samples, which he claimed showed self-repairing properties. Again, mad stuff. Just fair play to him. So I suppose very quickly people came to debunk the evidence, and this is what we'll finish out on. So the photographic and video evidence. The authenticity of Reed's photographic and video evidence has been a fairly central point of contention around the story, naturally enough. Forensic image analysts and skeptics have highlighted several issues. Experts consulted by numerous bodies and investigators have found discrepancies in the film negatives that he allegedly turned over. They've all but said that these aren't originals and that they're manipulated copies. The autopsy footage itself is, to be fair to him, like, it's actually pretty well done. you know, like, especially for him being like an amateur filmmaker, effectively, it's pretty well done. Like, the autopsy footage itself, it's pretty unsettling, actually, and it looks good. You know, it's a well-made film for what it is. However, upon review of it, it was deemed fairly replicable, and that the practical effects that were used were fairly widely available in the 1990s, so it could be easily replicated effectively, and there was nothing particularly special about it, in a sense that for someone who knew what they were doing, they'd be able to do it. But it, as I said, still looks pretty good. I gotta give it to him. Like, he definitely put thought into this one. So yeah, the Link artifact itself that I talked about, that was presented as a key piece of evidence, with Reed claiming it possessed all of these mad properties. However, independent scientific analysis was never conducted on it, and the artifact was never made available for any sort of third-party examination. And yeah, skeptics have kind of noted its resemblance to a movie prop, and demonstrations of its abilities were criticized as some sort of stage-managed approach, and that it lacked all sort of scientific rigor. So, you know, there's that. Reed also, as I said, claimed to have collected blood and tissue samples from the being, and he asserted it contained non-terrestrial protein markers and other anomalies. And some supporters have cited laboratory reports of unidentified isotopes apparently being identified, but no peer-reviewed scientific publication has ever corroborated these claims, and later reanalysis of the samples, including spectrometry in 2024, reportedly found nothing conclusively non-human, and most laboratories that were approached actually refused to publish findings related to the case because they were that sure that it was a total hoax, and they basically didn't want to give it any more airtime than it deserved. And yeah, as I said, the video itself was debunked pretty quickly. And actually, a television show, Fact or Faked, in 2010, they fairly successfully recreated the video nearly shot for shot and demonstrated that the footage could be fabricated using props and special effects. And the show's team concluded that the evidence was easily faked, could be easily faked, but they stopped short of declaring the case any sort of definitive hoax, which I suppose for TV, that's fair enough. And the final bit of evidence, I suppose, was Reed rang in to Coast AM with Art Bell, and he talked on the radio a good bit about this. And he underwent voice stress tests on multiple occasions, and these tests flagged signs of deception, but the scientific validity of such analysis in itself was actually quite controversial and not admissible in court, so we won't really talk about that. It's the same level of like lie detector tests, but people have said, the ones that do believe in it, that he was showing signs of being deceptive. And I suppose finally then, Reed himself was kind of debunked. I suppose a development in the Reed case was the exposure of Reed's true identity. So UFO watchdog investigated, and they basically corroborated acquaintances of this supposed Jonathan Reed, and they determined that he was not in fact Dr. Jonathan Reed, who claimed he was a child psychologist and child psychiatrist. He was in fact John Bradley Rutter, a man with no medical or academic credentials and a history of fabricating personal and professional achievements. His supposed affiliation with the University of Washington and Johns Hopkins University was completely fabricated. Exhaustive searches of university records, professional directories, and dissertation databases have found no evidence of this Jonathan Reed ever existing. He claimed to have worked at numerous prestigious institutions. All of this was debunked by university officials, and even his friends. He had numerous friends that initially kind of were involved in the case. They provided detailed accounts of his history of deception, including attempts to gain power of attorney over elderly acquaintances, which is a fucking horrific thing. He fabricated stories of professional involvement in high-profile cases, and he allegedly even had a history of dressing up family members as aliens for stage photos. So, you know, just very, very strange things going on there. And the final bit, which I think was probably my happiest part of all of this, was that he claimed to have owned a dog named Susie, but multiple witnesses have attested that this man had severe allergies and was not an animal person at all. And they have all basically said this man did not own a dog at all. So my comfort in all of this is that no dog actually died in this, which I'm very, very happy about. But yeah, that's kind of it. He weirdly has a number of supporters, which he just shouldn't. But there's some UFO researchers that support him. I'm not going to name all of them. He for as many supporters that he has even more skeptics and critics. So that's good anyway. But yeah, if you go on to places like Reddit and things like that, you will see people still asking the question. Like they'll post on the UFO or alien subreddits asking, "Is this picture real?" to this day. So it still does have a hold on, I suppose, the UFO narrative. And yeah, people are still thinking that it's real today. So, you know, I suppose to be fair to him, he did his business with getting it out there. It's just unfortunately very much so a hoax, which is obviously not good. But yeah, that's kind of it. There's not really much else for me to kind of get into on this. There's a bunch of other appearances that he's made in the media over the years. He still maintains that this is real, and yeah, hasn't really backed down from it. But yeah, that's where we are. So yeah, I'd love to know if you've heard of this before and if you've seen the pictures yourself. I'll share some of the pictures on Instagram. I can't share all of them because some of them will probably get flagged as inappropriate. But yeah, I'll share some of them on Instagram. And yeah, I would really love to hear your thoughts on this one and just kind of how wild it is, because it is a very strange case. With that said, though, I hope you're having a lovely day whenever it is you're listening to this. And yeah, you can catch us in the next one. Take it easy, guys.